Hey everybody, it's John Julian. Today I want to talk about piano technique, and I'm just going to share with you everything I know in a nutshell, just off the top of my head. Most of it comes from this guy Burton Hathaway, who lives in Connecticut near New York City. He's into his 90s by now. I don't talk to him as often, but there was a period in the mid 90s where I was just going there every week or every month for even a few days, and I would sleep over. He just knew something, and I'll never forget the first meeting with him. Oh, by the way, let me just preamble here. Why do we want technique on piano? It's not for speed, although that can come in handy for some pieces, right? But just for more efficiency, better tone, more resonance with less effort. So efficiency, less flat-footedness, more independence, more rhythmic freedom, more freedom. So when you're composing, you don't just go with the things that are kind of already under your fingers. That's a mistake, right? No one should ever compose like that. Should just hopefully be from your imagination, and then you can have more access to your imagination if your technique is good, because then you're just kind of not as blocked. You could just kind of, do this and that and that. Well, at least, that's my opinion. I'm not saying I'm 100% right about anything, but I'm just going to speak to as far as what I know. So that first meeting I had with Burton, someone told me about him. This guy, Bill McHenry, my friend, great sax player, he told me about this guy up in Connecticut because his friend Jamie Saft, who's a great piano player, plays with John Zorn and all kinds of guys in New York. He apparently grew up in the neighborhood near Burton's, right? And he said he had this interesting thing. And I didn't think I needed that much help. I thought it was kind of okay. But, when something resonates, you just kind of think, maybe it wouldn't hurt to try. So I went up there, took an hour and a half, and first thing he said to me was, okay, now play for me a little bit, John. I just played a little bit of jazz for him. And he said, interesting. And then he said, now, can you make a loud sound? I said, okay. And he said, now can you make a quiet sound? You see, he doesn't care so much about the style, if I'm jazz, classical. He just cares about the piano playing, because I didn't really know much classical. That's what I loved about him, is that he wasn't a snob or anything like that. I could just go in there, show him my compositions or my jazz stuff, and he was just interested in playing the piano well. Of course he cares, he's a composer himself, and knows all things about history and theory and composition. He knows all that too, but he's mostly concerned about playing beautifully with resonance, efficiency, and all those things. So he said, do you want to be professional? And I said, well, duh, I'm already professional. Yeah, of course. And he goes, oh dear, you need to play better than that. So I remember thinking, wow, why would he say that? Because he didn't need the money. He had tons of students. His parents left him the house that he was living in. It's not like... So I thought, okay, I think this guy's right, because I played a little bit of this Mozart piece. And then just a few bars, right? And then I had my Walkman cassette recorder with me, and I recorded it, and then he played it on the same piano. Now I used to think, piano's just going to sound like that piano, no matter who plays it. But with different language, different notes maybe, different choices. But yet he played that same piece, and it sounded much better than me. And I thought, why is that? He actually got a better tone on even one note. And he explained it to me in that first lesson. He said, well, it's kind of like the wine glass, where if you take a spoon and you do a nice clink, a nice ding, as opposed to a clink, and you hold it and you stop the vibration, right? That's not the best analogy, but that's the best one I can think of. It's just kind of like Burton said, that you can allow the tone to be its best, to not stop it, at least, to not get in the way. And I thought, I'm still skeptical, right? So I spent years going back to him and trying to know what he means, because he couldn't be inside my body moving joints for me. He has to just verbally communicate it. And after 1,000 tries, I would finally go, maybe I'll try this. And he'll go, yes, did you hear that? That was it, John. And then you remember it a bit more because it's like, oh, success. And I like that sound. And then you're motivated to want to remember how to get into that zone again because it feels good, sounds good, more efficiency, less injury, right? Less risk, I guess. More bang for your buck, so you can get louder volume with less effort. And I remember at that time, after a couple of years of studying with him, I would go back to a piano up in Yellowknife or Nova Scotia that I hadn't seen in a couple of years. And in every case, they felt lighter and easier. Now, you know that some piano technician didn't just sneak in there in every case and lighten up the action, although that's technically possible. But in general, piano started feeling easier for me and lighter. So let's get into it. Now, some people, when I was younger, I remember people thought, man, you don't have to study piano technique with someone. You just feel it. You just go. And yeah, there are people that have done that historically. Now, clearly, people like Glenn Gould and Keith Jarrett, my feeling is that they didn't have a lot of time with their first teachers. They were just kind of, okay, they had enough information, maybe came up with some music in their family and started at a young age, but were obsessed with the love of music. So they just kind of were in the woodshed by themselves with so much passion to figure it out. So that's probably how most people figured out, and that partly helped me, but I needed more. I think I was headed for trouble. And Burton said that I might be headed for tendonitis or just being frustrated ultimately. Because after meeting him, I had better rhythmic independence and freedom. So, just making that microsecond management difference in maybe one note, like and also right there I was also doing a volume change. So in the middle of a phrase, doing a volume, going and getting louder and softer. I'll come back to that. So I guess let me go through some of the principles of Burton. The first thing that I remember he said was the circles. It's all about circles. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, piano is a side-to-side instrument. It's mostly lateral. Sure, you do go down a little bit, half an inch, but a lot of the moving around is going to be side-to-side, a little bit forward and back. And I said, okay, yeah. And he says, so you need to be, when you push down a note, you have to make a circle. At least in practice. Now this goes, you eventually get rid of these and you won't see me playing circles. Okay, so eventually you let go of all this theory. It's just like the training wheels. So it's only like the training. You push down a note and then you finish with the circle. So let's say at 12 o'clock, you're in the air, 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock. This is if you're doing a clockwise circle. And then now I'm getting to close to 4 o'clock. Now I'm starting to make contact with the key. And at 6 o'clock, I'm all the way down to the bottom of the key. And now 7, 8 o'clock, I'm starting to move away from the key, in the air again, and up again. Now that's an exaggeration, but we go through this exaggerated period just to train. And I said, what does that do? And he says, it proves independence and that you're not caught up in your hand. And it ultimately will lead to more fluidity, and the line will hold together better. So if you have a line that's that was kind of a long line, right? But even in the spaces, I tried to make the space flow forward. Because sometimes, 30 years ago, if I played that line, it would have been da-da-da-da, and then kind of a flat-footedness, a kind of a clunkiness, and then a starting over again, and a flat-footedness. It's the starting over again and the flat-footedness that you don't want in piano. More than any instrument maybe, because piano, we're not breathing wind or air through it, right? So we need to create the illusion of that it's fluid and flowing and beautiful, right? So even in those spaces, like so there's a lot of rest in there, and we want that to be still supported and flowing. Okay, so let's get into some more things. So the circle thing, that was just a summary. I could go into more detail, but it'd be a little bit boring. So eventually, remember, the circles disappear. But then he said there was other circles in the body too, like the shoulder, arm. I'm not as good as at explaining that part. The next thing is that weight is not in the equation. So forget about weight. People talk about that all the time, but it's, in my opinion, it makes so much sense that there's no weight. There's just mass. You're moving mass like this, let's say, and you're moving it, and then at some point you might move that mass very quickly to make a loud sound, or perhaps you use your arm speed. So velocity, Burton always said, velocity is the thing that makes a loud sound, not weight. Because if you think about it, weight is one kind of acceleration straight down. It won't help you get sideways, and piano is very sideways. You're always moving sideways, and the weight concept won't help you get off the key, like upwards, because once you played the key, you've got to quickly come off and sometimes go to the next thing. So try to forget about weight. The other thing is rotation was very important too. So this really helped me, and there's other teachers that talk about some of these things too, but just maybe they use different language. But it's really important. I tell all my students all the time, even if they're kind of beginners, I right away go to the black keys, like let's say these 3 black notes, and remember that thing that we learned as kids where you make a knuckle, a fist, and you use your knuckles, and you're going brrr, brrr. So try to take that to the next level, which is fingers. Now sure, we have to use our fingers, but if you help it with rotation, and then let's say I'm going to continue up the keyboard, I've got to pull that thumb over, start over again, another rotation. So let's go that way. Okay, I'm really exaggerating now. Okay, so I'm going to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then turn over, let's say, and start the rotation again. Kind of like a tumbleweed or a starfish on the bottom of the ocean floor. So I'm exaggerating. I don't do that much when you see me play in a concert. But that's really important. And man, has it ever helped me when let's say I'm cold walking outside, and then I go to a gig and I haven't warmed up, and blood isn't flowing yet, but then if I use rotation, it's like, see it? I'm pushing 5 notes down. Just pushing all 5. And then now try to rotate. Don't even use your fingers really. I'm just kind of going brrr, brrr. So the better you can get at that, that's really going to help. The other thing that really helped me was noticing this joint here, that you can get a nice help to your rhythm and your volume and velocity using this joint. Well, basically the elbow. So I tell my young students to make a fist like that, and then just play one note, doesn't like a black key, like that. Now what that does is we're removing fingers from the equation here, so we're just saying, hey, you're just using your fist. And oh, by the way, when you do this, don't use the wrist. I mean, that's okay for other things, but not in this exercise. So you're just using that. You see how we isolate all these different parts and we practice them all, and then eventually you forget about it and you just put them all together and it just works out. So the next thing is to use fingers and try to do that. So try to keep maybe a thumb, and then the elbow is going to push down that thumb. So I'm going to try to not use my thumb motion, right? Even though that's okay normally, but just for this exercise, I'm going to try to just use the elbow, the speed. And I remember my rhythm improved when I did that. It just had a little bit more sparkle, a little more definition. And the other thing that I would do later on is he made me aware of the shoulder too. So I would do some rotation there. I would never do this in performance, but just in practice, I would make a big circle. Try not to move the other stuff. Just try to put down a note just using shoulder. See, I can't totally do it just using shoulder, but you know what I mean, right? So even just your hand, you can just put your hand down like that. Just put your whole hand down. So I'm partly using elbow, but I'm trying to getting used to these larger components of the body. Later, he got me to work on the back, and that was harder to explain how that works. And then in my later years with him, like in the last couple of years that I saw him, he would spend half an hour talking about my leg and hips on the bench. And I was getting a bit bored. So I even had to say, hey, Burton, okay, I know you're right, but I just don't want to spend too much time talking about that. So I had to kind of shut that down a little bit because it was getting too technical. But even though he was right. So, yeah, an exercise you can do is something like start in a low wrist position. See, my wrist is kind of down like that. Pick any note. And I'm just going to, let's say for now, just use the thumb. Okay. And Burton always said do repeats. So remember, I'm not practicing a song right now. I'm just practicing some random notes. So I'm doing this. I'm taking the thumb. And I'm just making little circles to make this sound. Okay. I'm not throwing this is a big no-no, is throwing the wrist at the note. Multiple times per lesson, he would say, John, you did a little bit of that, where you threw your arm or threw your wrist at the note just before you played. Right? So it's better if you can just be kind of all supported and then like that. Okay, so wrist down and then keep doing that note. And now wrist slowly up. And it's really hard. It took me many years to get this. But because I thought I was doing it right, and he would always have to stop me and say, no, you got caught here, or you got caught up here, or something like that. So the goal is or the reason behind this, there's a few reasons. When you do this, the only way that wrist can come up is if this is permitted to move and this is permitted to move somewhat, right? Like these have to be open. And Burton can see when these are closed or not permitting, because then other funny things happen that give it away. And I'm not that good at observing that stuff, but he could. So that's one thing. Oh, and I need to back up a little bit. So the tumbleweed thing, it's clockwise when you're going to the right, and counterclockwise with the fingers when you're going to the left. That's just common sense. That's like a tumbleweed would have to turn that way and have to turn that way. Then I said to Burton one day, wait a minute, what if I have music that's kind of going both ways? Like, I'm playing some random notes right now just to demonstrate. And he would say, well, you do the best you can. Like, you're going to have a section that goes up a little bit, and then you're going to have maybe a couple more notes that go down. And then he would say, overall, though, the line is generally going up, which is true most of the time. Usually you have to pick one. You can't always. Okay, so we've got these circles that you're doing, right? And the wrist. We've gone through a few of these things now. What else can we do? Oh yeah. People make the mistake of thinking that when they're finished playing a note, that they can just pull their hand off, right? Or the worst thing is that I see over and over again, and Burton had to stop me a million times about this, is that I was doing pretty well. I was trying to listen to what he said, getting close to the key like he wanted me to, with not much motion here, just kind of keeping a quiet hand, fairly still. I get close to the key, and I was ready to play something for him, and then at the very last second, I would do a little flick. I would do a little ReGet Ready. So he called it a R-E, get ready. So it's almost like you're getting ready for the second time when you didn't need to. You were already ready. So I'll show you what that looks like. So let's say I'm getting close to the piano and I should just start playing. Instead, I get close to the key and then do a little bit of a last minute flick because I thought I had to kind of come at it with more velocity or something, or I had to kind of have some more mass to throw at it. So it's tough stuff to talk about. The other analogy, there's a couple analogies I want to share. Do you know the Red Cross helicopters, planes, they fly over, I don't even know if this really happens or whatever, but just imagine it. They're flying at, I don't know, a few thousand feet over some poor country, and they're dropping their supplies, their food supplies. So they're flying in a straight line. They drop one box, they drop two boxes. They're not going like this. Every time they drop a box, they're whoa, whoa. They're just flying straight and continuing. Yet there was a mass change, right? It was subtle. Now, can we fly over the keys? I'm not touching any keys. I'm just getting close to them. Okay, now I'm just lightly touching them. Just lightly going over them. Now, can we occasionally play a note? But I don't want to see a big, dramatic thing. Can you make it that this arm is very quiet and calm, and that the thumb, or maybe a finger, independently just plays a note? You won't be able to do a loud note like this. But I'm going over the key and then occasionally playing a note like that. But watch, the wrist is steady. It's not flopping every time I do that, and it's not collapsing like that every time I do it either. So see if you can do that. It's really hard. It took me years. The next hardest level, the next level up from that would be to do the same thing, but do kind of down for this one, up for the next one, down. And remember, you're not going move, 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 flying over, stop. The plane doesn't stop, right? The Red Cross plane, it keeps going at the same rate. Okay, so down, up, the next level might be 2 or 3 hits, repeats. Remember, Burton always said do repeats. And also when you do repeats with the different wrist position, you're also training these knuckles to sort of operate in different conditions. Up, high wrist, low wrist, maybe at a bit of an angle, this way and that. The other thing I forgot to mention early on was that will help. It's one of the basic things. One of the first things Burton would tell you is that you try to generally think of when you move your fingers, try to think of this joint, moving it from this joint. Sure, you can have it curved. You can have a curved finger for some things, and sometimes you have to have it more, right? Sometimes you have to have a flat hand. Sometimes you have to have a really curved hand, like a small chord like that. So both this and this are all fine, but try to think of the motion as mostly being from there, and then from the thumb. That's the wild card. People don't know this, but Burton taught me that you got to think of moving from there. It's a bit hidden, right? Because it's deep down there. But he said that's the one you want to think about, not this. That's the one that's visual, but no, think about more like that one. And I guess there's something about the circles that help prove that you're truly supporting. Kind of like coming back to that Red Cross plane. Yeah, because if you only ever move up and down, you'll have trouble. I don't know why that is, but I know that. Okay, and I was going to say just one more thing about this whole thing. Oh yeah, a couple more things. So, when you make a loud sound, I try to think of that I'm using, velocity rather than weight. And that as soon as that first half of the key goes down, like let's say it goes down 1/2 inch. So when the key is, we're talking about a loud sound, right? Fast velocity. When that key goes down 1/4 inch, I've already, in my mind, I'm trying to go no further. So I'm already trying to stop my elbow and everything. Because what you don't want to be pushing on the key. For that should be done. So by the time I'm finished striking the note, there's no pressure on that key. Even a loud sound, like I can make a real loud sound, and sure, for a second there was pressure on the key, but almost as fast as possible, someone could just go like that. If someone were around here, they could just go I could just easily flick my hand off. So that's really important too. And oh yeah, and then general, this is not Burton stuff, but this is from Doc Nani and some other people. But it's a really useful exercise when you're first starting out, is push down 5 notes. And it'll be even harder if you do like involving black keys. But for now, maybe the simple one, just C, D, E, F, G. And push them down, but not hard, right? You're not holding too much pressure, just barely holding them down. And now lift up just the thumb and do some repeats. Now let's do the index finger. Now while you're doing that, the hard part is to hold the others down. See? And then it gets even harder if you do 2 notes at once. So now I'm doing D and F. Now I'll hold D and F down. Ooh, that's rough. I can feel like I need to work on this or something. It's been a while. Yeah, so try all different kinds of combinations. So that's pretty much it. There's got to be something else, but right, because people don't change overnight. Like just from watching this video, you're not going to change overnight suddenly. So but I want you to. I want to help. So I'm trying to think of what would be the first thing. I guess it helps if I watch you, then I can make some more custom-made comments, right? But for sure, I see a lot of people flapping. So they'll play and they'll flap, play, play, play. The duck flap is, some people call it. And my opinion on that, you can challenge me if you want. Maybe it works for you. That's okay. But it's to eliminate tension but then there shouldn't be tension. So if they're doing that, it's because they've got a little tension built up and it helps get rid of some of the tension before they start again. I don't think it's necessary. I think you should work on getting rid of the tension so that you don't have to duck flap, personally. So yeah, let's review. So try to think of circles in training, but not in performance, just in the training. Circles going that way. Circles. Oh yeah, and I didn't talk about down up. Oh my gosh, that's really important. So in most music, there's an end of a phrase and a beginning. And I never used to know this. And I can't prove if it's true or not, but Burton, he told me enough times that I kind of believe him. In most music, it's like, let's see. Yeah, I'll just do a phrase like that, or right? So that mostly went up. It went down a bit, right? But then it kind of mostly went up. So it ended. There was a definite kind of end there and a pause. So he always said, usually start down, wrist down. And then by the end, your wrist should be up. Now, sometimes you don't have time or the music's too fast and you're just busy doing other things or coordinating the left hand. But when possible, that has helped me. And I still think of that to this day. I still put a little bit of that in. It can be subtle. And I don't know what happens, but like I said before, I forget if I said this at the beginning of the video, but he could hear if the wrist was up. And he just felt like that it gave it an ending rather than a beginning. I know, it sounds cuckoo, right? So there's that, and let me play something like, let's see. What do I think about when I play if I'm out of shape or something? Right? How would I warm up? Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So there was about a year where I was taking his later advice, so sort of like in the later years that I was seeing Bert. And it was advice on that I'd gotten most of this right, but then my back and hips weren't really on. And I said, Burton, why didn't you tell me this before? And he said, well, you weren't ready. And I was like, oh, okay. So now I was ready, and then he was saying, okay, now lean forward. So I know you can't really see me, I'll move back a bit. So he said, lean forward. And I would kind of do this a bit, like I put my head forward and chest forward. He said, no. Keep this just neutral. Nothing's going on at all. Nothing happening. Just simply if you can feel the sit bones, your pelvis, bottom of your pelvis on the bench. If you can only just sort of move that. Like one of those mechanical birdies that goes into the water, that dips its head in the water. Okay, so you practice that. That's the first level, and then come back again, same thing. But then a more advanced level would be to go in a curve, or side to side a little bit, and then a circle eventually. So it's like a reverse pendulum. If you had a pendulum hanging from something and then tried to move it in a circle, it's like an upside down pendulum. And again, it's just this isolation. It's hard for me to explain, but my playing got better. Maybe because it relaxes and you're learning, you're feeling what all these things are doing. Now, of course, the ultimate goal is to have emotion in music. But I do believe when you clear the technique up, then the emotion comes through. And I've heard stories where Burton's students, other students, their parents would report often that the parents would cry after hearing a song that they worked on after meeting Burton. So for example, they're playing some simple classical song and it would evoke tears or emotion from the parents, even though these kids maybe weren't even mature enough to know what proper emotion was for that song. So I don't know if I said that right or explained that clearly. But basically, in a nutshell, technique can help you get to the emotion easier, I think, because then you can just be yourself. Everybody has emotion. Everybody generally, right, everyone who's devoted to music loves it because it's beautiful and they want to communicate something. So getting that technique and sound helps you. For me, it helped me like my sound more. When I liked my sound, I was okay with playing a simple thing. Like sure, I play some complex music too, but I remember going. I did a few circles in there, by the way, without thinking, just because it's such a habit now. And I tried to, in that little space there, I wanted to support. And that's the last thing I'm going to talk about is the support. It's very hard to put into words. But I think we make the mistake of thinking that piano is, that we can kind of rest our hands on it almost. Like, hey, I'm playing a chord now, I can sort of rest some of the weight on the keys now because I'm already on the playing the note down. No, it has to be almost as though you were afraid of going to the piano and that you're holding really, really heavy weights and you're trying not to scratch the piano with these dumbbells, right? And you're just holding, it's just crazy, but it's just the best way I can say it. So I've got some huge dumbbells and I'm holding them over the piano, never actually letting them scratch the keys or touch the keys. Now, the only way I can hold those heavy weights is by, kind of engaging my legs a bit, my back and stuff like that. Now, of course, we're not doing that when we play, but that's the best analogy I can think of, is that you have to at least consider that you're just supporting all this mass to the point where you can just play a note. Another way that might help explain that, because I know it's not totally clear, is that a spider, like let's say a tarantula, sorry to leave you with this image, but if it were to walk on the piano, that's not great. Well, for a lot of reasons. But you might want to move to a different country if that's happening. No, but it's walking on its weight. So let's say it's on 2 legs, and then another 2 legs, another 3 legs. It's got its weight on those legs. You don't want that in piano. You want to be the tarantula that's suspended on a string, and then it's just choosing to kind of do a little tap dance. Ballerinas are great for this. They create the illusion of no gravity and of that they can fly. But they work really, really hard, as you know, to get that effect. So same thing here. Yeah, that's the best way I can put it, I think. So remember your circles, your up, down, your elbow for percussive stuff, rotation, right? No, it won't be that much in real life, but just when you're practicing. And then get rid of the weight concept. It's more velocity and no pressure. Once you make that loud sound, no pressure. And that's about it. I hope to do a continuation one day, and hope that was helpful. Okay, thanks. See you later.